Welcome to 5 Good Minutes. You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Galatians with Dan Shields.
There was going to be blood. That much was certain. For weeks they had been tracking their prey, and the trap was finally set, and the hunt ensued. This blasphemer, the one who was set on destroying all that was sacred, was going to walk into this ambush, and he himself would soon be destroyed. His blood would spill, just like his leaders had spilled on that hill they called Golgotha, outside of the holy city. He stood watching eagerly. Even over his short, choppy breaths, he could hear his heart beating. He wanted to see it happen. He'd never been so close to a stoning before, but he knew the inevitable outcome of this fateful encounter. He wondered what it would sound like, that final stone that would drop the victim so that he would face his just due, the ultimate wrath of God's judgment. As he watched, he had a curious thought. He considered the wealth and power that the Sanhedrin held. Most were Sadducees, and most of them were better dressed and held more positions of power than his sect, the Pharisees. But nonetheless, he had aspirations. He was considered the best and the brightest. He'd studied with the renowned Gamaliel, and he was on a good track. The sky was the limit for young Paul. As the interrogation began, he thought how clever the high priest was. Just let the accused talk. He'd trip up eventually. Give him all the rope he needed to hang himself with. Clever. He secretly wondered in his heart of hearts if he might one day be in that position. He quickly shut the thought out of his mind, one thing at a time. Finally, as the accused monologue became more animated, the moment came. At first, Stephen masterfully articulated the history of Jewish redemption. Every schoolboy could tell you the story, but this man Stephen had something special, something different. No wonder so many followed him and were entranced by his lies. But then, just as the high priest anticipated, Stephen slipped. He grew intense and angry, and then it happened. Blasphemy. And that's what they were waiting for, and all they needed to hear. Chaos ensued, and it was hard to make out what the Sanhedrin were even yelling. But the awaiting crowd jumped into action, picking up the rocks that they had eyed during the interrogation. Some laid their cloaks at the feet of young Paul, not wanting blood to get on them, making them ceremonially unclean. But then, something strange happened. Rather than cower, this rabble-rouser stood up, erect and proud. And even stranger, his face seemed to glow as he looked upward. He almost gasped as he cried out to no one in particular, "Look, I see heaven opening and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of the Father." There was a stunned silence in that chaos for a few drawn-out seconds, and then the sickening thud of the first rock met its target. Paul sat remembering this sad and shameful memory. He could still hear those rocks and see that angelic face. He too now followed Stephen's master, and he too longed to see the Son of Man face to face. How far he had come from that day as he put pen to paper to write in his characteristic large letters to the churches in the Galatian territories. He thought of the Damascus Road and the blinding burst of light, that flash that changed a life, who was now changing the world. He thought of the incredulity of the people of the way who were terrified of him, thinking him a spy for the high council, only to realize that he had more passion for preaching the gospel and more boldness than all of them. He thought of the years gone by, the sweet fellowship and laughter and the miracles, the unbelievable things that he had witnessed with his own eyes, the undeniable power of God breaking through the darkness of this depraved world like it had broken through in his own life. The thought of the apostles, who now called him friend. They weren't like the political power brokers of the Sanhedrin. These were men who wanted to give their lives in service to others out of their love for Christ. He remembered with pain his own stoning, and the beatings and the hunger and the cold being lost at sea. And he thought of his sweet, sweet Savior, the one who had rescued him, the one who was once an enemy, who he now called Lord, and longingly awaited to see. He rested his pen on the paper as he thought, and then his hand began to move, as if directing itself. Paul, an apostle, sent not from men or by a man, but by Jesus Christ and God the Father, and all the brothers and sisters with me, to the churches in Galatia.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.